Grassley, thanks for being with us on Washington Unplugged. Are we going to get a health care piece of legislation the president can sign this year?
I hope so, because our health care system is not in very good shape. And all I can tell you, answer your question, is on this very day, we're still on target to get a bill through the committee in June and on the floor of the Senate during July. Now, something could happen in the next 2 weeks that doesn't occur, but since the first of the year, Senator Baucus and I have been planning this. Now, I'm saying that without telling you that we're going to end up with a product that can be bipartisan, but we're still working to try to get a bipartisan. And Senator Baucus expresses a desire to have a bipartisan one. Obviously, I want a bipartisan one. And the president told us as recently as a couple days ago that he wanted a bipartisan bill.
On the question of the public plan, you said you're against it, but you've also sent some good signals or warm signals towards this idea of a co-op. Explain that a little bit.
Well, first of all, you got to understand, in a lot of parts of rural America, and maybe even in urban America, but more in rural America, cooperatives are a very essential part of our society for 150 years. Just think of rural electric cooperatives. They've furnished electricity to farmers that wouldn't have got them from private utilities 100 years ago. We have co-ops for grain elevators, so farmers can get together in a cooperative way to market grain. So setting up a cooperative along that line might be a way of compromising between Democrats that want government to run everything, and not all Democrats want that, and Republicans that don't want the government more in private health insurance. And the bottom line of it is that if we'd follow that pattern, it's a possible compromise. But now Senator Schumer has put some ideas into that, and quite frankly, I think that his efforts could change it so that it'd be interpreted as a public option.
The other element of those three you mentioned, cost. 47 million people uninsured. The effort here is to insure everyone. That's the president's goal anyway. How's it going to get paid for in the short term and then in the long term?
Well, of course, you got to look at that from two angles. What's possible and then what's on the table. The president's put every possible tax increase on the table. You know, there are probably no other tax increases could possibly be put on the table after President Obama's got done with what he's asked us to do. If we went that far now, we'd kill the economy in recession. So Republicans and Democrats are looking at doing most within health care itself. Two sources. One, whatever we can save on wasteful Medicare and Medicaid spending, and number two, what revenue would come in from doing what we call cap the exclusion. And can I make a point on capping the exclusion? The word cap is very important, because I think the word's got out that we're going to tax every dollar of tax-free health insurance provided by the employer. We're not going to do that. There are a couple members that would like to do that, but we're not going to do it. It might be capped at above the national average. See.
On the question of bipartisanship, give me your feeling about how it's gone so far, both with your colleagues here in the Senate, but then also with the president. Has the tone so far been...
Well, I told you a couple weeks ago, four of us had a meeting with the president. I found the president very flexible on almost every point except getting it done. And he, of course, would like to have it done yesterday. But on other points, including even the government-run plan, he very much supports that. But I found him to be reasonable, and one measure of that would be discussing the co-op plan with him, as an example.
When he was over in Paris, he sent a note. His Saturday radio address was saying, you know, get the work done. And you wrote something on Twitter that suggested, you said he had some nerve for saying that. What was the message you were sending to him?
The message was that he ought to know better. And let me say why he ought to know better. Because since he's been sworn in office, those of us working on this issue have been almost constant communication with him. He knows the calendar we set up, and we're working overtime to stay within that calendar. He knew that very weekend that he was enjoying himself in Paris. And I don't deny the president having a vacation with his family, sightseeing in Paris. I'd enjoy doing that with my grandchildren. But to say what he said, it didn't need to be said. It didn't help the cause, and I resented it.
Now, this is something new, this Twitter business. How does this happen? You hear the news, you've got your, how did that come about, the writing and sending of that message?
Well, you people on TV always have these things at the bottom of your TV set so we can keep up on the news besides listening to people like you. And I read across there 3 or 4 words. President says, got to get this done. Better get it done, you know, or something like that. And I had my BlackBerry with me, and you know what came out of that.
Right. And what does it mean when you said when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and I'm not a nail?
Well, you've heard the acronym, or not acronym, you've heard the title of somebody that's a hammer. Don't you remember Tom DeLay was known as a hammer because he was always trying to beat everybody over the head to get everything done just the way he wanted it? Well, I interpreted the president's remarks about get the job done as hammering us. And I wanted the president to know that he can hammer, but he ain't hammering this nail.
And what did he say when you met with him after you sent that message?
Well, he kind of smiled, and he says, you know, Chuck, I just thought there was a very good reason for me to go to Normandy. And quite frankly, there was a good reason for him to go to Normandy. And it's even all right if he takes his kids on a sightseeing tour through Paris. But he didn't need to say what he said, particularly when my staff and Senator Baucus' staff were working day and night on Saturday and Sunday while he was walking around the promenade.
Judge Sonia Sotomayor, if the hearing was tomorrow, what would you want to know from her?
Want to know that if she's going to act as a justice, like Lady Justice over the doors of the Supreme Court, blindfolded, holding the scale of justice, meaning that that as a justice, Lady Justice is only looking at the law, leaving all the bias out. When the president promotes her being on the court because of the word empathy, she might have empathy. That signals to me that he expects somebody maybe to put their personal bias into making a decision. I resent that. That's judicial activism, and I don't want judicial activists on the Supreme Court. My job is to legislate. They can't legislate. They can legislate. They shouldn't legislate because you can't vote them out of office. They got a lifetime job. It's my job to legislate. And you can vote me out of office if you don't like what I vote for.
Right. The kinds of strong opinions you've expressed here, in the Republican Party there's a debate right now about whether to stand up and express views loudly and clearly, or whether to change the message and kind of change the tone. Where are you on sort of the state of the Republican Party and that debate going on within it?
My position is the best policy is the best politics. The politics will take care of itself if you're right on policy.
And how about the health of your party? Do you feel like things are, you know, here in the low period, the party will bounce back? How do you assess the health of the Republican Party right now?
We are bouncing back, and the reason we're bouncing back isn't necessarily for what we've done. It's the way this administration is scaring the people of this country with this big deficit that we're leaving to our kids. The budget that I voted against, that was a partisan budget to get through, triples the national debt in the next 10 years. Every man, woman, and child is going to own $130,000 of that national debt. You know, it was a bad thing when Bush left a $1 trillion deficit, but it's worse when this president doubles that within 3 months being in office.
Senator Chuck Grassley, thank you very much.
Glad to be with you.